Oh, hello there. Welcome to Weekly Lit, episode 16. Today we're going to discuss Michael Chabon and his novel, Moonglow. Michael Chabon is a fairly prolific writer. I've read a number of his books and collections. You may have heard of Wonder Boys. I think there was a movie made from that. Mysteries of Pittsburgh, The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay was very good. The Yiddish Policeman's Union, Gentlemen of the Road. Summerland, Final Solution is a Sherlock Holmes type, or maybe a pastiche of Sherlock Holmes, and it's also quite good. So he's a very capable writer, and I was thinking that I've covered a lot of Catholic writers so far: Edna O'Brien, Ernest Hemingway, and we'll be covering Flannery O'Connor, Graham Greene, but Michael Chabon and William Faulkner, not Catholic during his lifetime, but I'm pretty sure he is now. James Joyce started Catholic, but lapsed or renounced. But anyway, this is somebody with a different background. Michael Chabon is a Jewish writer, and which I find interesting because it filters into his writing quite heavily, particularly in the book Moonglow, which is a very interesting read that I enjoyed. It purports to be a memoir from his grandfather, sort of an as told by Michael's grandfather, who is never named in the book that I recall. And I mean, it's classified as fiction, it's classified as a novel. So beginning from, as I've mentioned before, the unreliable narrator issue that we have with any first-person narrator, which I enjoy that type of analysis, questioning what is the narrator really telling us? Is it credible? Can we believe him or her? In this instance, we have another layer of that because it's being told by Michael according to what supposedly his grandfather told him. Is his grandfather credible? The grandfather is telling all of this at the end of his life, so there may be issues of degradation or embellishment that it all comes into play, and it's a very human story written at a human level, meaning much like James Joyce, it gets into some gritty details, I'll put it that way, that one would not expect to hear from a memoir of somebody's grandfather, and his foibles and things like that. So it's earthy in a way, in some parts, but very truthful and honest. And so, as my uncle would say, if there's parts that aren't true, well, they should be. So anyway, the writing style is what I would call very dense. In other words, it's worthy of your attention, and I find Michael Chabon's works almost to the, I think almost all of them, they're not quick reads for me. And I can't exactly put my finger on why that is, other than what I would call dense writing. You just want to delve into every paragraph and every sentence, and you get the sense of that. And he doesn't waste words, so it's not like reading maybe a nonfiction book or a thriller or something where you kind of scan through there, get the general gist of it. He's very that's what I call dense. I apologize for the heavy breathing in the background. The dogs are padding about. But anyway, I'm going to read an excerpt from Moonglow by Michael Chabon, and this is in his grandfather relating a story of trying to recover a chest during World War II, at the end of World War II, when the Germans were surrendering, in a churchyard in Germany, where there was a holy relic, and the for what it was worth, the wealth of the local church had been hidden and buried in a well. And so he's working with a local priest to retrieve the relic and the treasure, I guess you could call it, down at the bottom of the well. So, from Moonglow by Michael Chabon. My grandfather had Gatto back the Jeep through the churchyard gate and around the edge of the burial ground. Gatto threaded the gaps among headstones until he was alongside the hole. Outside Bonn, Augenbaugh and my grandfather had come upon the wingless but otherwise intact fuselage of a small flying bomb, a guided missile we would call it today, jammed into a frozen pond like a cigar butt into the sand of an ashtray. It was of a design no one had ever seen. It was stuck fast in the ice. So Augenbaugh and my grandfather had gotten a hold of a welding torch and improvised a winch out of salvage, spare parts, and a length of chain. They freed the Enzian, as it later would turn out to have been codenamed, packed it up, and shipped it back to Wright Field. Wright with a W. Now, my grandfather paid 10 feet of chain from the drum mounted to the front of the Jeep. He tossed it over the limb of a bare chestnut tree that must shade the church wonderfully in summer, then passed it around Gatto's waist a few times. He cinched it at the back, leaving about 7 feet free at the end. He tied a piece of stiff fence wire to the loose end of the chain and gave it to Gatto. He and Diddens picked up Gatto and turned him upside down so that he dangled headfirst from the branch of the chestnut. A dagger trimmed in nickel with a black scabbard fell out of Gatto's pocket and hit the ground with a thump. It was decorated with a silver eagle. Diddens got in the Jeep and backed it up a little closer to the tree. Gatto swung over the hole. A silver ring, ornamented with a death's head, fell out of his pocket, and then a wristwatch, whose face, when my grandfather retrieved it, had a pair of lightning bolts in the 12 spot. "I'm sorry," Gatto said. "Tell him I'm sorry." Father Nickel said it was nothing, but my grandfather thought the old priest looked scandalized. My grandfather wrapped his arms around Gatto's hips and aimed him. Dittos paid out more chain, and Gatto's head went into the hole. "No," Gatto said. "No, goddammit, I can't do it. Take me out." They winched Gatto back up out of the hole. He was crying. My grandfather took his place. Diddens and Gatto turned him upside down and fed him down into the hole. His shoulders barely cleared the sides, and his body blocked most of the light. My grandfather thought he could smell spring stirring in the darkness of the hole. It was a meaty odor, a smell of worms. He dangled from the taut end of the chain. He put out his hands. His fingers touched the cold zinc that clad the chest. He braced himself with his left hand, and with the right hand fed the wire through the groove in the right wall of the shaft. He poked it through the underside of the chest, and then kept pushing until the tip of it emerged through the groove in the left-hand wall. He tied a knot in the chain and called out that he was ready. Nothing happened. He called out again, louder. He kicked with his heels at the chain that held him suspended. It thrummed meaningfully. Still, he dangled, a Jew on a chain, sharing a straight grave with the bone of a saint. The smell of worms began to cloy. It had the wet blanket heaviness of his own exhalations. He was suffocating. The Luftwaffe had been all but knocked out of the fight, but every once in a while a stray messer would fly overhead with its MG-131s chattering and flashing. Maybe Diddens, Gatto, and Father Nickel had been strafed. Maybe the old priest had decided to punish him for killing Eloi, and Gatto for looting the corpses of dead SS men. But as blood filled his head, it seemed to bring an odd tranquility. Suffocation was reportedly gentle and quick, so long as you did not struggle against it. He thought about the sense of profound relief that had spread across Alois' face as he was dying in the street. Then he felt a painful jerk at his waist. In under a minute, he was up and out on his feet. The evening was upon them in the west. In the east, the sky was going from gray to black. So that's just an excerpt from Moonglow. Maybe you can see what I meant about the density of the writing, where it's all meaningful and descriptive, and sensory. And so I recommend picking up anything by Michael Chabon and seeing what you think. He's got a good sense of humor, and he writes in all different genres. That's another thing that I like about him. His just a lot of development and growth over the course of his novels, and just writes about a lot of different subjects. It reminds me of T. Corrigus and Boyle in that regard, as another fiction writer of that vintage, and I think somewhat like John Irving. John Irving, not maybe with the Jewish aspect. I shouldn't say maybe, definitely without the Jewish aspect. More of a waspy approach, but they can pull off, a writer like John Irving or Michael Chabon can pull off absurdities in their stories and make them believable just by the strength of their descriptions, and the language that they use and the thought process that goes into it. So I really admire that. Much in the same way, I guess Kurt Vonnegut does too, even more absurdly sometimes. So they sometimes go for some wild reaches in their stories and can pull it off. So anyway, thumbs up for Michael Chabon, and until next time, read harder.